But also, to keep in mind, is the aliens love us. So our relationship with the aliens it's kind of complex, but it's also fairly simple. It's like...
Because keeping it open would be like
beating a dead horse
Exactly.
or you throw it off a cliff.
Exactly. And the reason that it has to be open like that, there's a lot of reasons. It has to do... I know it's going to make some people pop. They're warning me. I got to slow down. I call this where I get into this manic thing. It's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, really fast. It's like doing blow. It's like fucking snorting a big old line off Daddy's desk. And so I have to be careful about doing it. But yeah, as long as we aren't destroying anything, then we're all right. As long as we're not blaming or accusing anyone of anything, then we're all right. And I know a lot of people would say, if they heard this, that, oh, well, you're just making excuses. I hear this from them all the time. It's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. And I've heard it too, and I used to say the same thing. I've been in those positions where it's like, well, you guys just don't want to take any accountability for anything, and then they'll say it right back to me, and it's like, well, what the fuck is this? Because I can tell that they have an influence, and the influence that they have isn't always benign. Sometimes I've almost died several times, and blamed it on them, and been like, well, fuck you, you tried to kill me, and all this shit, and rape me, and all this, and then you laughed at me afterwards, and blah blah blah. And so it looks like that because, like, if you develop a paranoia, because this happens with paranoid schizophrenics all the time, is they'll develop this worldview where they're like almost solipsistic, where they think that they're like the dreamer in the dream, as I used to put it. That was my paranoid schizophrenic delusion, was that I was the dreamer inside the dream. And I still worry about this to this day. It doesn't ever really leave you, schizophrenia or psychosis. It's always there. You can kind of put it in the cupboard and put it away for a while, but it's still there. But anyway, so I've been in those positions where it's like, well, these aliens are obviously just owning everything, and we're just their slaves because they're so much more powerful than we could ever be, and they predict us so far in advance that there's no way we can escape their clutches and all this stuff. And what I realize is it's not exactly like a novel where they write everything for us and then we just play our parts inside that story. It's not like that. It's more like an adventure, choose your own adventure story, where it's like, okay, if you choose to open the door, go to page 43. But if you choose to walk away and go back to your room, then go to page 41. And it's like two completely different stories then, depending on what you've chosen. So it's choice-based. It is a story, but it's a choose-your-own-adventure story. And what it does is it follows the choices that you make along a storyline or a path. And that's how it makes it your predictions. That's how everything ends up getting tailored to you. Now, most people, when they awaken before they're of the age of 2. They'll normally become aware of this matrix system with the aliens contacting and influencing. They become aware of that before they can even speak, most of them. I did not. And there's a lot of people that I've met that also didn't. And there's actually gradients, because there's going to be people in between too. There's people that have never awoken, where I call them aboriginals, where it's just like, you'll see it sometimes in homeless people, but even most homeless people are aware. In fact, most of the homeless people that I met were very aware of the Matrix and hated it, and hated the ones that created it, which are the aliens. But the reasoning behind their hatred is very simple. Well, they keep talking shit, or they put me in some situation where I got my ass kicked or stolen from or lied to or whatever, but they're forgetting all the times that they also allowed them to get the upper hand in a fight or steal from someone, etc., and all the good things that happened to them too, when they made better choices or when they just happened to take advantage of it. The way that the aliens deal with this is karmic in some way, but it also is reflective in the sense that they try to take our paradigm, our ethical system, and reflect it back to us. And I've actually tested, experimented, and confirmed that this is the case on one occasion, but I haven't been able to do it over time long enough to be able to tell for certain. I do know there was one instance where it did happen, but I don't have enough data to prove that there's a pattern, or to prove that there's, or to ever, no one could ever prove that. I just realized that. No one could ever prove that. But it could be disproven if I were to predict something and then it didn't happen. But anyway, I've noticed that this happens in my own life to a degree that I don't wish to test it. I'm satisfied personally off the one event where it did happen. But if I deviate from an ethical standard, which I write down so I know what the actual rule is, if I break that rule, then I get some kind of a problem. Most people don't write their ethical systems down, and they don't spend very much time, if any, thinking about it during their whole life, but they do adhere to some ethical system. For some people it's Christianity, for some people it's Judaism, for some people it's moral relativism. It could be a moral system based upon whatever you feel like, which is probably most humans. It's just like whatever you think, I don't know. I have never done the statistics, and I don't know what the value is of someone's heart or what their actual ethical code is. All I know is what I can predict and explain from what I've seen from them. And that's all of us do, including the aliens. So whenever they try to predict us, you'll notice that there's something that's off about it, or maybe there's something that's stuck where it's always off every single time and it never gets corrected. And then you'll look at them and you'll be like, well, what the fuck? Obviously, these are just robots. But it's not. It's not robots. It's people who operate a robot who then reflects our paradigms, including our ethical views, back to us. So, and the reason is because if it were any other way, then we would be enslaved. Because think about it. How would they ethically judge us? According to what measure? Their own? That's biased. What about ours? Well, which one? We have all kinds. So they individuated it, and so every single human has their own ethical standard, and that ethical standard is part of a story, and that story has a predictable end, depending upon what the plot of it is. So if your story is a comedy, then it's going to be something good all the time. It might be weird, it might be bizarre, but at least it's good in the end. But then there's other people that have a really shitty time, and they live their entire lives like that. And usually it's from old childhood trauma. You'll see that. I did. Anyway, I saw that a lot. That most of the homeless people that I saw that were really down and out, they were, it just seemed obvious to me that they weren't raised well. And the ones that I did talk to that talked to me about their childhoods, obviously they just weren't great either. So the point is, we tend to perpetuate the same systems that we're born into. Now, if we choose to change that system, and then we learn that we have the power to control our own destiny, then we really awaken. And that's like the final actual awakening that's supposed to happen with the communication that we have with these aliens. And so the purpose of that at the end is that we develop to our fullest potential of freedom and volition so that we can choose what we want to do. Now, the reason that they provide us with that ethical standard is so that we don't also become corrupt, so that we don't deviate from what we want. So they help us along that path by enforcing that ethical standard that we secretly or non-secretly believe in. And then because of that, we can see ourselves in that mirror, in that reflection, and then we know where we stand, and we know where we're going, and we know where we've been, and we can contextualize our story in the cosmos, in existence, with God, I believe, or not, depending on how someone believes. But they don't tell us, we tell them. And it depends on statistics and patterns of our behavior and speech and thoughts. all of which can be read objectively. So then they just apply a rationale to that, the most probable rationale that fits the most data, and they just simply attach that to someone's life. So they also, maybe not. Nope, they gave me a correction. So they use maybe it's the largest coherent model. Okay, so the largest coherent model, that means the model that is self-consistent, so it doesn't have any contradictions in it, it's not logically fallacious, and it's the biggest. It applies to the most data, and no, it has the most number of algorithms. Oh, interesting. Okay. The most complex one also then, ostensibly. So yeah, they teach us to try to evolve that. And recently I discovered that they were greatly involved in the creation of life on this planet, and that they speed up our evolution. Now, that means that we're racing to the grave or we're racing to heaven, but either way, we're racing. We are going very, 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 very fast. And a lot of people, historians, note this all the time, that how did Mark Twain put this, is if you were to put the entire history of life on this planet and represent it as the Eiffel Tower, the human existence would represent the skin of paint at the top. It's that thin of an amount of time that we've been here. And yet, we already have full domination over the earth. So, not only that, but we also have computers, and we're on the verge of developing AGI systems. So we could even copy sentience, and we could actually create life, like new life, with the technology that we already have as humans. So it's definitely not far-fetched to believe that the aliens were involved in the process of creating us. And I like to think of them as being our parents, along with God, as their offspring. So, and then when we get to a closer level to them, then we'll be in a position where we can create life ourselves, and we can have our we can have whatever world that we choose to create. And so then we'll also co-create with God. And I call that the fourth era. That's like the last part of our journey with the aliens, if we succeed in passing through the first three eras. The first era is death. That's, well, oh shit, they're gonna kill us all. That's this apocalyptic bullshit that I hear sometimes, with people trying to get the military involved, which is absolutely idiotic. A human military is no match for an alien military. We would get absolutely obliterated. There's no fucking reason for that at all. It's not even an option. And then the second era is that we, I know this is gonna sound funny, but we could fall in love with them because they're so absolutely complex. They're not absolute, but they're very, very, very complex and very deep. And so when we realize that, then we have a problem of falling in love with them or trying to have sex with them or something like that. And so that's the second era. And then the third era, if we make it past that, is the sickness. And that's when we realize that everything that we've ever done in our lives has been pointless, all the way up until realizing the most grandiose thing that we fell in love with in the second era, whether it's them or some idea. There would be some people that would get possessed totally by an idea and believe that they're the Messiah and run around calling themselves Jesus Christ and performing various miracles and things like that, proselytizing to the youth and all that. So there's a lot of stuff that will go wrong, and hopefully it won't go that wrong, but you'll see all of that. Then after we make it past that, then we get to the fourth era of co-creation with God. And that's when we get to start creating life. And that's when we start to be able to talk more directly with the aliens on a professional note so that we don't get into weird secondary shit. So that's the whole process of what the aliens are doing. That is the process that they keep talking about. The process, that's the process.